Alright friends, I'm going to do a video on completing the square. I'm going to give you some background on it, and then I'm going to give you some ways to think about it, and we'll see where we wind up. So, completing the square, the whole point of completing the square is we want to take a quadratic in whatever form it's in, and we want to turn it into something squared. So, the first thing I want to look at is some patterns. So if I take that, that's really this. And if I multiply that out, that'll get x squared plus 6x plus 9. If you don't believe me, feel free to do it yourself. If I do that with x plus 4 squared, I want to skip the middle step. That's going to be x squared plus 8x plus 16. If I do it with x minus 5 squared, I just change it to minus so you have another one. That's going to be x squared minus 10x plus 25. If I do it with x plus b, do I want to use b? No, that'll confuse you. X plus q squared. That's going to be x squared plus 2q plus q squared. Now, here's the pattern. You notice how the middle term is double that term. And you notice how the last term is the square of that term. That's the pattern. That's what we're going to use for completing the square. So let's explore that. Suppose I'm given this quadratic, x squared plus 10x minus 7 equals 0. I don't know. Start with that. You notice how I have a 1 in front of my x squared. You don't have to. In fact, let's change the problem. I'm going to be lazy. Let's do this. Let's change the problem. So it's 2x squared plus 20x minus 14 equals 0. In order to complete the square, it's easiest to have a 1 in front of your x squared. So I'm making that happen. So I can divide the whole equation by 2. So I divide the whole equation by 2. I wind up with x squared plus 10x plus 7. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to split that middle term, x squared plus 5x plus 5x, because of the previous page. I'm going to move that 7 while I'm there, because I don't want it there. You don't have to move the 7, but I just added the 7 to both sides. Now, if you want to, you can peek at factoring. I often factor by grouping. So to factor by grouping, I look at the first two and I say, what can I take out? I can take an x out. When I take that x out, I'm left with x plus 5. In order for factoring by grouping to work correctly, I need an x plus 5 here. In order for us to have an x plus 5, I need a 5 here, because you have a 5x here, so I need a 5x right here. Now that's a 5x. Well, what's that? That's a 25. So that means up here I need to put plus 25. Now, so that I don't break the rules of mathematics, I need to add 25 over there. So that's going to be 33. Now you finish factoring on the left side. So you have x plus 5, and then x plus 5. Now I could combine that, make that look a little prettier, write that as x plus 5 squared, and now I have a quantity squared equal to a number. So let's unsquare both sides. Now when I unsquared, also known as the square root, don't forget plus or minus. And then to finish it off, just subtract 5. And that's all you need to do. I'm not going to leave you there, though, because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it so it's a crazy question. Let's do this. 3x squared plus 7x, minus 10 equals 0. So my first hope is that I have a 1 in front of my x squared. So I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to divide everything by 3. So divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. For consistency, I'll divide by 3 over there. So that's going to give me x squared plus 7/3 x minus 10/3 equals 0. All right, let's keep rolling. We've got x squared. I want to split 7/3 into 2 pieces. So let's have a quick discussion of that. I want to take 7/3 and I want to divide it by 2. Well, that's the same thing as multiplying by a half on top and bottom. So that's going to be 7/6. So I'm going to split that middle term into 7/6 x plus 7/6 x, and I'm going to move the 10/3 just like I did on the previous page. Now, let's do that factoring. Take the x out of the first two, and I'm left with x plus 7/6. And then I need x plus 7/6, so I better have a 7/6 here. So up here, I'm going to do 7/6 times 7/6. So 7/6 times 7/6, you just go straight across. 7 times 7 is 49. 6 times 6 is 36. So that's 10/3 plus 49/36. And on the green line, 10/3, if I make that into 36ths, so multiply by 12 on top and bottom, that's 120. So that's going to be 169/36. Ooh, that works out nicely, actually. So let's finish factoring. I'm going to skip that one step, and I'm going to write x plus 7/6 squared equals 169/36. Now, I have a squared thing, so let's unsquare it. Take the square root. Don't forget plus or minus. And I can actually take the square root of the top and the bottom, so 13/6. And let's go ahead and subtract the 7/6 plus or minus 13/6. So that's 7 plus 13, sorry, negative 7 plus 13, which is 6/6, which is 1. And it's also negative 7 minus 13, which is negative 20. Negative 20/6 is negative 10/3. All right, now the last piece that I want to talk about is completing the square, but only having an expression. So let's do 5x squared plus 13x. I've done plus a lot. Let's do minus 13x. Minus 13x plus, 8. And I want to turn this into a squared thing. So I still want a 1 in front of my x squared. So I'm going to write it like this, dividing everyone by 5. But I had to take a 5 out. So I still have that 5 there. I still want to split that middle term. So that middle term I'm going to write as x squared minus 13/5 x. Nope, 13/10 x. And if you don't know why it's 13/10, you're taking 13/5. You're dividing by 2. That's the same thing as multiplying by a half on the top and bottom. That cancels out. That's 13/10. So minus 13/10 x. Ooh, 13/10 x. And then plus 8/5 still. Now, we want this to be x squared minus 13/10 x minus 13/10, I can't write that second one apparently, x plus something or other. So let's think about what that something or other has to be. So what that has to be is 13/10 times 13/10. So 169/100. Now if I add that, I have to subtract that also, 169/100. And I still have the 8/5. And let's go ahead and factor. 5x, x minus 13/10. Don't write that second x. And then minus x minus 13/10. So that's going to be 13/10. And if you didn't understand where the 169 hundredths comes from, it's right here. 13/10 times 13/10. And then we can go ahead and combine these two pieces. So 5 turning into 100 is by 20 and by 20. So that's going to be 160 on top over here. So 160 and 169 is negative 9. So negative 9/100. And then let's finish factoring. So we have the 5. And we have x minus 13/10 squared minus 9/100. Now, let's suppose we want this in what's called vertex form. So the only thing you have to do is write it as 5, distribute that 5. X minus 13/10, don't distribute it in here, but distribute it to the 9 over 100, so 45 hundredths, which you could reduce, but you don't need to right now. And that's in what's called vertex form. So if you wanted to do it that way, you could.